Live from London, it's Plank of the Week with Mike Graham.
Good evening and welcome to another exciting edition of Plank of the Week, the one show where we can be as judgmental as we want because you know what? We don't care what you think. We do want you to join us though, because tonight we're going to look at all of the things and all of the people that have been the biggest planks of this particular week. And there have been plenty. Last week we managed to do it without mentioning Harry and Meghan at all. I don't know whether we'll be able to do that this week, but it would be quite something, would it not, if we could go 2 weeks without it. Got a great panel tonight. Geddes returns, the man who knows everyone you need to know. Esther Krakue is here. She knows quite a few people as well. We've also got Annabel Denham here with us for the first time, commentator extraordinaire, and Allison as well, who's a newbie from the Freedom Association. This, of course, ladies and gentlemen, is what we are going to be playing for, the Plank of the Week. And I'm going to open the floor, first of all, to Mr. Geddes to give us his first nomination. Who you got?
Well, Michael, it's a rich tapestry of planks that is out there, but at the lead of my nominations is NADHIM ZAHAWI. And yes. His interesting financial wranglings, which as a Chancellor of the Exchequer for almost 2 months, he's done an awesome job of actually unravelling his own financial affairs.
NADHIM ZAHAWI has been in the news all week, and by the time this show goes out, I assume he'll still be in his position as chair of the party, but a lot of people think he shouldn't be.
I don't think he should be. I think as things are unravelling, he's gone on the offensive, which is quite typical in these instances, usually of someone who's quite guilty of situations, rather than taking a defensive, pragmatic and impartial position. But fundamentally, it comes down to a company that was set up in Gibraltar for the sale and the management of YouGov, which he set up, which supposedly he didn't have any shares for, which was a company called Bowshaw, which his parents got 40% shares of, which there was a big question over why his parents would have it. He then explained he needed his dad to give him some help. Doesn't really give us a great deal of faith in the fact that he was a Chancellor.
He explained it after he threatened everybody with libel.
Oh, yes, of course.
Before
absolutely.
He actually started to explain it. The thing that surprises me is he hasn't asked YouGov to do a poll as to whether or not he should stay in his job.
That might be convenient,
If you own the company, why wouldn't you?
And I think it's very generous, considering that he doesn't have any ownership, as he alleges, to have paid almost $5 million in taxes and penalties to HMRC. And there is a big question over the fact that now, and again, it's these little breadcrumbs of information which are coming out, and having done a number of investigations into dodgy financial people overseas, I can say you can find these little breadcrumbs all start adding up to a very big loaf of bread, that he's actually received dividends, which if someone isn't a part of a company, and I'm no corporate structural expert, if you are receiving dividends, there is usually a directorial position that necessitates that.
I mean, I guess he's a plank, isn't he, Andrew, on the basis that he's got himself into this situation. And he didn't really need to. I mean, he could have easily dealt with it in a different way. One of the big criticisms of him is that he actually was Chancellor of the Exchequer while he was having this row. Although he was only Chancellor of the Exchequer for about 5 minutes, wasn't he? Because he kind of came in right near the end. You know, when there was about 5 Chancellors of the Exchequer that particular month.
But he threatened a tax lawyer. Well, his lawyers threatened a tax lawyer investigating his affairs. Then he goes around threatening journalists. Then he says he'll produce his tax returns. He'll quite happily publish them and then doesn't. So it doesn't really pass the sniff test, I don't think, and that's the problem.
But the thing is, if you're in politics, the first rule of politics is clear up your finances. Because
Exactly.
that's the worst thing to have follow you around. Look at what happened to Boris with the whole, you know, he had to pay money to the IRS because at the time he was still an American citizen and all of this. Just clean up your finances before you enter politics, because it's one of those things that will always loom over your head, especially if you're a Tory.
That wouldn't be fun, Cookie. That wouldn't be fun if they cleared it all up, because we wouldn't have something to question and bring them down on later.
But is it also, because it's a vast amount of money as well, doesn't it show that they're so out of touch because they've got this kind of money?
Yes, it's the idea that he didn't seek legal advice for a whopping sum of money going above £20 million. As you say, it may not pass the sniff test. And, of course, politicians like to, should we say generously, withhold the truth when it comes to giving interviews. But he certainly said on Sky News to Kay Burley that his affairs were hunky-dory, knowing that there was some kind of investigation going on by HMRC. So,
I mean, I love the fact that he's been just sort of literally trying to dodge the bullets as much as he can. I mean, it really is the worst example of bullet time ever, where he's trying to gracefully glide past them, but they each keep hitting him again and again and again. And the problem is that even with Rishi Sunak's complete U-turn on his position where he said, well, we'll leave it to the experts to obviously overlook this. It's now we're going to have to look at this more seriously. So when you've got a member of your own team, your leader of your party, who's going, actually, hang on a second, this may be beyond not passing this.
Well, he's not exactly whiter than white or cleaner than clean, is he, with his wife's tax situation?
Yeah.
But I mean, at the end of the day, my sympathies are never with the tax people, because I think the tax people can hound people into an early grave sometimes and get things very wrong. And so, you know, he was in dispute with them. I have some sympathy with him. I think he's been a plank because he should have sorted it out.
He should have been transparent about it.
But I think when you are such a high net worth individual, obviously matters of taxes are just complicated. It's just the reality of the situation. So I think when I first heard of this, I didn't actually think it was that big of a deal, because I thought at least he paid his taxes, at least he paid the penalties.
And he's paid the fine.
Exactly.
So is that the end of it?
I do think there is a bit of a witch hunt against the rich in this country, which I don't understand it. I actually find it very baffling.
I agree, Cookie. I mean, I've worked with some... Sorry.
Why do you keep calling her...
That's my Instagram name.
Why do you keep calling her Cookie?
What is that?
That's the second time. I'm not having that. I'm banning that word.
Okay.
It's an inside joke.
Now
it's an inside joke.
Well, we can't have any inside jokes on this show, because it's my show. My inside jokes only.
Okay.
That's enough about Nazim Zahawi as well. It's your turn now. Lord Russell-MOYLE.
Yes, I was about to say, I hope I get that right.
Yes.
Lord Russell-MOYLE, who is a Labour MP, who's probably the biggest plank I've seen in quite a while. So I'm not sure if you all saw... what's her name?
Miriam Kate.
Rosie Duffield.
Rosie Duffield.
Yes.
Rosie Duffield, yes.
She was in the House of Commons, and she was
she
talking
was on
about her
Piers
criticisms.
Morgan's show this week, wasn't
Exactly. She was talking about her criticisms of Scotland's gender recognition bill. Because obviously top of priorities is what prisons that trans-identifying prisoners should go to, with all the problems that we have in this country. And she was talking about how it would impact women's spaces and just women's rights more broadly. And then you had her lovely colleague, Russell-MOYLE, who was
who's
literally...
on the same side. Right?
Exactly. Who was literally shouting her down in the comments, saying what she's saying is disgusting and it's shameful and she should be ashamed of herself. And I just thought, a man is shouting at a woman for talking about women's rights. How did we get to this point?
It really is mad. I think we have a clip of him doing it. Let's have a look.
Goodness me, that speech was probably one of the worst transphobic dog whistle speeches that I've heard in an awful long time. The idea of linking trans people with predators, frankly, is disgusting, and you should be ashamed.
Oh dear.
There we go. Right, a man shouting at a woman talking about...
And it wasn't the only time he did it, was it? He then started shouting at Miriam Cates, who is another Tory MP this time.
And he moved towards her.
And he then moved and sat in a sort of very,
side,
what I would have thought, intimidating and threatening way, on the wrong side of the chamber, which I didn't think you could even do.
And Keir Starmer has been silent on this.
You can on the side benches. You can, because it's not part of the chamber.
Right.
Yeah, but Keir Starmer has been silent about this, which is completely shocking to me. But also Jess Phillips, who's done a lot of work with, you know, domestic violence victims who happen to have been women, most of them. She's been completely silent about this. And I just think, how can you possibly shout down your colleague when she's talking about something that concerns half of the population? We're not just talking about the 10 trans people that happen to exist in the UK. We're talking about half of the entire population, which are women. And so he's a plank for this, because I just think we're in a dystopian nightmare. I think the Labour Party does have a women problem, clearly.
Well, Rosie wrote that article, didn't she, for Unheard, saying exactly that she's finding the Labour Party an uncomfortable place to be.
It's pretty obvious, since Keir Starmer can't define what a woman is. And
whether women have penises.
Whenever they ask him the question and he sort of skates around it, he talks about how he doesn't want to get into it, it's complicated. Well, it's not complicated,
but they're not even taking
really?
it seriously. They think it's a fringe culture war issue. But it's, the bigger question is, how can a women's rights issue be a fringe culture war issue? That's 50% of the country. Right? You know, women's spaces, women's refuges, women's bathrooms, women's prisons is not an issue that just affects, you know, 10 people. It's half of the country. So I think the way they're handling this is, quite frankly, ridiculous. I do think this is going to rear its head at the next election. I think
it's going to be a problem for them electorally, isn't it? Because women are, generally speaking, I think, not particularly radicalised about this. Most women have the view that Rosie Duffield has. They don't side with the trans lobby, particularly the rather extreme version of the trans lobby, which is really quite violent, isn't it?
Women spent a century fighting for progress. We've reached a reasonably good point, and now everything is going into
down women for talking about it.
Also, I think Rosie Duffield needed protection at the last Labour Party conference.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's why she didn't go.
I mean, that's a really sorry state of affairs.
It's not good. Absolutely right. But, I mean, I don't know where it ends with the Labour Party, because they're going to rip themselves apart. They seem to have sort of found themselves a relatively happy place on Brexit. You know, they've now kind of more or less agreed that they don't want to go back into the European Union, even though I'm not sure everybody believes them. But at least they seem to have found some common ground. But this is going to split them again, isn't
exactly.
it?
And
Angela Rayner doesn't say much about it either.
But this is the odd thing, because
What's she got
these
to say?
issues particularly affect working class women disproportionately.
Yeah.
How can the Labour Party claim to be the voice of the working class when this issue is disproportionately affecting working class women? And so it's such a, there's such a cognitive dissonance going on here that I really don't understand how they're going to get out of this pickle. Allegedly, Keir Starmer is married to a woman, so you'd think he'd be more familiar with women's
Well, he's got a
bits.
daughter as well, who apparently is a woman.
Who may or may not have a penis.
Yeah, well, I think not, because I think one of the things that he did say was that he very much enjoyed the women's football. So
I know, but the women's football, the women in the football team may have penises.
I don't think they have.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I've seen the pictures.
Okay.
But that's right. There's a select number of circumstances in which it's okay, it's appropriate, it's right to be supportive of women. But when it comes to the trans issue, that simply isn't one of them.
It's
and
amazing.
notice how it never affects men. Men are never concerned about trans men in men's prisons or men's categories or any of that. It always happens to be trans women. I wonder why that is.
Yeah, I don't know if we've got time to get into that, but it's a very good question.
Yeah, it's very odd.
Annabel, you've got another women's issue to bring up with your first
true.
plank.
Well, I'm
Tell us.
actually not suggesting individuals, I'm suggesting institutions. So the first plank that I'm putting forward is the Women and Equalities Committee.
Yes.
Last year, they looked at menopausal women in the workplace and what further support the government could provide to them. And they concluded that menopause should be a protected characteristic and that the government ought to implement some trials of menopause leave. Now, this week, the government rejected those recommendations, among a series of others. And I think that the government is absolutely right to have done so. These are patently absurd. Having menopause as a protected characteristic would throw up all sorts of issues for employers. They could find themselves dragged into employment tribunals if women are made
So would that
redundant.
mean menopausal would become a thing? So you could be described as menopausal in addition to being a woman? A bit like being a trans woman.
Yes, you could be described as menopausal, or if that word was used in the wrong context in the workplace, it could potentially be hate speech. So you could see what the
legal...
How did we get to this place?
can of worms that could be opened by this.
I think the legal standard would be they have to make appropriate adjustments, because that's what happens with regard to sort of disability law, for instance, with employment. You have to make appropriate adjustments.
But that's like saying having the menopause is like a disability. Though,
well, it would fall under that category because it would be I mean, they wouldn't phrase it that way, but it will fall into that category because it's a protected characteristic. So you have to make appropriate adjustments to make sure that doesn't infringe on them being able to carry out their job. So if you have to sort of put money towards something that affects women with regards to their menopause, you have to do that as an employer. That's your responsibility.
But what I find really frustrating is this is such a distraction. Menopause actually is a real issue. For many women, it is a grim and long experience. But rather than focus on the way in which the NHS is so unsurprisingly failing women, not just menopausal women, it's worth saying. There was a study out this week that found that women's healthcare in this country, according to a massive poll, is about on par with women in Kazakhstan and Slovenia.
But I'm surprised it's that good.
That's encouraging.
I'm surprised it's that good. You can probably see a doctor quicker in Kazakhstan, I imagine.
I know.
And we had HRT shortages, and we're not really looking at ways in which we can improve treatment of women. We're now looking at ways in which we can try and legislate for menopause, in which we can just wrap employers up in more layers.
I think that's the concerning thing that we were discussing this earlier about the whole issue of where it comes to an individual who may be dismissed from the company as to whether they were insufficient in doing their job or they weren't diligent enough. And having lived with a couple of women who've been through the menopause, I know that it's so sporadic. It can come on at times. It can affect some more than others. It's a very difficult element to diagnose. Then there's a disclosure and embarrassment of them having to provide, say, medical notes by a doctor to say that they are on hormone replacement therapy. So, but it puts I think your point about putting the employer in that precarious position where they could dismiss someone, and inevitably there will be people who will abuse it and say, well, I wasn't good at doing my job because I had the menopause. And then the whole thing becomes incredibly messy.
We're kind of overcomplicating life.
Well, it's the lowest hanging fruit for politicians, just layering regulation on employers.
I mean, I think we need less government regulation, not more. I don't think we should be going around looking for more places to regulate.
You know what we get that with? A Conservative government. Do you know where we can find one of those?
No, I haven't seen one for ages.
It might be interesting,
No, I mean, we now have more government than we've ever had.
Oh, yeah.
I don't remember any government being this much in my life.
Blair's government was more right-wing than this current government.
Yeah, of course it was.
Policy-wise, it's incredible.
I mean, I remember living in America under the Ronald Reagan administration where he basically had that famous phrase, the worst sentence you'll ever hear is, I've come from the government and I'm here to help. Where they didn't do anything. They just let you get on with it. You made money, you paid taxes. If you wanted to pay more tax, you could. If you wanted to pay less, you could. They didn't do anything for you. They didn't tell you what to do, where to go, who to do it with. You know, it was
now we
proper...
have a government that wraps its arms around
And now
us.
everybody, but also the people that live here are also always asking for the government to help them. What can you do to help me? I don't want them to help me. Stay the hell away.
Yeah, exactly.
And the COVID restrictions and all the money that was doled out has made that worse. Because now everyone seems to think, oh, I'm having a problem.
Yeah, what have you
therefore
done
the government is going to help me.
I know.
Stay away
shocking.
from me. Just let me keep more of my money.
Exactly.
I think that's a pretty good balance.
I'll
More about
spend it.
freedom. Yeah,
I'll
exactly.
spend it the way I want to. Andrew, you've got your first one. Looks like it's the police to me.
Yeah, well, the Metropolitan Police, I mean, where do you start with this one? I mean, a recent report said that 1 in 10 Metropolitan Police officers should not be in their job for one reason or another.
Yeah.
I mean, some of them have been guilty of crimes, including, sexual crimes and indecent exposure and things like that.
Which is incredible. You'd see that and you'd think it was a stripper. Well, if I saw someone in a police outfit and then they started stripping, I just think, woo! You know what I mean? I would think I was at a Vegas party. Yeah. And then you see their badge and it's real.
Turns out you're actually in London watching the Metropolitan Police.
Exactly, and I wouldn't know how to feel about that. Sorry.
Yeah, no. but then you've got Samart Rowley basically saying that every week there's going to be 2 or 3 Metropolitan Police officers going to court on various charges. Then we hear that the recruitment process still now, it doesn't require face-to-face interviews as you would absolutely expect it to be. And it just seems to be one thing after another. And I think every week that goes by, there's just another story. I mean, if you go into Google and put a news search in and look at it in order, I mean, there's something about one Metropolitan Police officer. It's not just the ones that we've seen recently with Wayne Cousins and whatever that other bloke's called. I can't remember the most recent.
Bastard Dave, he was known as.
Bastard Dave.
Which is, I think, is appropriate.
There are
You'd be worried, wouldn't you?
many others.
What's this guy's name? Bastard Dave. Okay, great.
There's a red flag.
Nice to see you.
I mean, I think the quality control of the entry into it, I mean, I've got a good number of friends who are in various branches of the Metropolitan Police. Morale is super low right now. Cresta Dick, who's getting a lot of the stick for what's going on right now, she was trying to get rid of, obviously, a lot of these problems before Mark Rowley came on. Mark Rowley, who's a very, very capable, very, very good qualified police officer, has inherited this. So they're doing their best. But where I see the problem is in the entry level. Even the beep test. You look at a lot of the police officers out there. There are many that are working hard, but there are some which literally look as though they're propping up a McDonald's in their neighbourhood. Yeah. You know, I know a friend of mine who did the beep test the other day, and he walked it. And he said, you can actually walk the beep test. You know, we want police officers who are going to be strong. Yeah, the beep test is basically, it's mobility, it's speed, it's being able to sprint, that sort of thing.
Can you chase after a bird?
Oh, OK. But person doesn't know what it is.
But yeah, I mean, the long and the short of it is, you know, the quality of the police officers has diminished. And I think this is fundamentally one of the biggest problems.
Because the thing is, the Metropolitan Police doesn't sound appealing, or the police force doesn't sound appealing to many young people or fit people that would want to join. But also, I just think the structure of the police is terrible. I've been very clear that I do think the Metropolitan Police needs to be completely disbanded. I do think, like, local policing needs to be implemented in a completely different way. But I also think standards need to be improved. And with that comes better pay and, better working environment. If you want disciplined, fit, actual good police officers, you need to make it more attractive to them.
But isn't the point here that they've reduced all of the things that they used to demand, right?
Well, they cut funding as well. The Tories cut funding.
So you can't ask, for example, I don't think it's about
funding.
Well,
we lost 20,000 police officers
but I think it's about,
Theresa May.
But I think it's about the fact that they've, instead of asking for people to be fit, they've asked for them to be diverse. Instead of asking them to be, smart, they've asked them to be, right on.
But Mike, this is like the politicians. The problem is with the higher-ups, these people who fast-tracked into senior positions, who never walked to the beat, never were on patrol, have never had someone spit, shout, scream in their face, who are now coming up with these stupid, politically correct, woke initiatives, whether it be rainbow cars or whatever, rather than focusing on pure policing. And this is why I think a lot of the youth have lost their respect. And this is why also you've got police officers who are, excuse the pun, handcuffed in being able to respond to those situations. I mean, I think back, I'm probably older than you, but I mean, I think back to the days when I was young. You did not back chat to a police officer. No. You got a clip round the head in 2 seconds. And I'm sorry, but that might sound a little harsh,
and they didn't
we
dance
need to
around
have
with
that.
people.
No.
Did you see that video of the 2 female police officers that were trying to arrest a man, and he just elbowed him.
Yeah, I saw that.
And he just ran off.
Whose right idea was it to put 2 female officers on patrol to try and handcuff the 6'3"?
I mean, bless them for trying.
Well,
bless them for trying.
Yeah, but if the 2 females are tiny and they have expertise...
It's not about being tiny. They could look like Miss Trunchbull.
In jiu-jitsu or something.
They're 2 women.
Yeah, but women can be deadly.
Yeah,
they
can.
So we're deadly in other ways, and
That's true.
You know this.
I know some deadly... No, I know some deadly women physically.
You know.
Yeah, I'm with Mike on this. Women can be deadly.
Women can be just as capable of arresting people.
I've got a friend who knows taekwondo.
There might be the new kinds of women. Absolutely. The new kinds of women with the penises.
No, I don't do this.
It's not a private show over there, you know. Do you mind just joining the rest of us? So heavens, that's the second warning he's had now. Geddes.
Sorry.
Careful.
How many strikes?
Coming up, we're going to do some pop music in the next bit. Apparently it's pop music anyway. You might have heard of them. I'm not going to tell you who they are, but there's 2 stars in the firing line. This is Plank of the Week. Welcome back to Plank of the Week. We're already well into the show. We've already got some pretty good nominations. Who's going to end up as the winner at the end? We shall see. But I'm going to go with my first nomination, and it is the beautiful, very wealthy woman known as BEYONCE. Now, she might be somebody that you've looked upon before as one of the great advocates for the LGBT community. She's written various albums about, you know, songs only to do with the gay community, and she's been a great supporter of that particular community. However, she's been criticised massively this week, because it turns out she went to Dubai, which of course is in the United Arab Emirates, which is not a place known for its tolerance of the LGBT community. She was paid $24 million, however, to do it, which turns out to be about $250,000 a minute, which I think even for the most hardened sort of advocate of anything might be tempting. But I mean, it just goes to show you, doesn't it, that these people should never be listened to about anything other than what they do. Yeah. You know, I quite like some of Beyonce's songs, but I don't need lectures from her about, you know, how we should be tolerant of everybody and how we should promote, you know, all sorts of different, you know, ways of life, because that's a very important thing. Because she's completely just like taken it and piked them all into the ground and gone, stuff you lot, I'm going to make 24 million and I don't really care what you think. Fair enough, do it, but don't pretend. I think she's a hypocrite.
I don't. This is the problem. She's a performer. Just stick to performing. It's like David Beckham, you know. Stick to.
But she made this album called Renaissance, apparently.
Exactly.
Which was all about, you know, love for everybody and
everything,
embracing of the LGBT community. She didn't play one song from that album.
Well, obviously she wouldn't.
Right.
she'd be
not one song. Right. So when she went to Dubai, suddenly that was all. Don't mention those songs,
exactly.
You know. She was opening a hotel. You know, I haven't been to Dubai for a very long time. I'm sure it's a great place to go. I just think that, you know, I wonder as well whether she will be forgiven, you know, because these people like to be...
I don't know. I have to say, I think it's being awfully precious to not forgive her. I think, look, she's a businesswoman.
So what, you think it's okay to have no principles then?
No, I agree with your point that, you know, I don't want to be preached to by entertainers. Entertainers are there to entertain. They're not to give me a lecture. If I want that, I'll go and find that from someone who's qualified to do it.
Yeah, like me.
Like you, Michael. And you're the only one I would listen to, the voice of reason.
Yeah.
And common sense.
Yes.
If I'm not mistaken.
Indeed.
So, yeah, I mean, I know there are a lot of very ultra-high net worths, I know personally, who will fly in Beyonce. She usually charges for a 20-minute set about $1 million, or used to. Stevie Wonder about $2 million, a few others, and they go and do these private parties.
But these are like private parties. This was the opening of a hotel.
I know, it was a big worldwide event. But I think that, you know, all of these artists, their labels, they will play to their audience. And so if they want to pick up on a demographic, then maybe the album's going to come out with rainbows on it. You know, if they want to pick up to another demographic, they're going to play to it. They're savvy marketeers. But, hey, I can't blame her. 24 mil.
But the thing is, objectively, she doesn't need that kind of money. It's the same thing with David Beckham and Qatar. They don't need that kind. I need that kind of money. I most certainly could do very well with 20.
Yeah, but you know, you say that, but once you start living that lifestyle, actually, you do need that kind of money because it runs out pretty quick.
The thing is, she and her husband are they're billionaires. Their combined worth is in the billions. So objectively, 24 million. I mean, it's still a lot, but it's really a drop in the ocean for them. They could lose 24 million tomorrow.
Maybe she'll ring up NADHIM ZAHAWI and ask him whether she paid tax on it.
Oh, I'm just saying. But the thing is,
don't bother.
She doesn't need the money, so she didn't need to do this. So in that way, she is a bit of a hypocrite. But again, this just goes to stick to the same singing.
Yeah.
No one needs to know your opinions about
She could win
politics.
Plank of the Week, though.
I don't know. I'm really scared of the Beehive.
Oh, yeah?
Okay, so my question is, when was the last time you saw Beyonce before that performance in Dubai?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't remember.
So she's keeping current, you see, making 24 mil and keeping a star high in the
and stomping on the gays while she's at it.
In the firmament.
Win-win.
No, she wasn't stomping on the gays.
She's stomping on the gays.
Dubai may have, apparently, a gay community there. The thing is, it's
They
like
do,
Qatar.
they just don't talk
They
about
just
it.
don't talk about it,
don't talk
and
about
you
it.
can't
I think you
flagrantly
could do quite an interesting experiment
display.
with celebrities who like to preach about these sorts of issues and find out how much you need to pay them in order for them to totally
Just give
rescind
it up.
their principles.
Yeah.
Do you think Beyonce was offered 23.9? She said, no, that's
No, it must be
absolutely not
24.
something I can do. It's got to be 24.
It could well be. It's a good thought. You're next, Will.
So my next nomination, Mike. So it is a subject I'm passionate about, and this is this whole furore going on with the SNP and with Nicola Sturgeon and all these hardened criminals, rapists, paedophiles, and various other sexual offenders who are finding the loophole to jump on the trans wagon, and I am going to state it as the trans wagon, to basically allow themselves to be put into women's prisons. Now, I'm not to say that the women within those prisons aren't going to be able to handle themselves sufficiently, but they're obviously, these individuals know that they would get a far harsher treatment if they were in a male prison. I don't believe some of those stories. I think, A, it dilutes the story for many genuine trans people out there who want to do their thing. But again, the thing that sickens me to a certain extent, Mike, and just makes me fed up, is we're playing to that minority which is now being used as a loophole in various parts of our life and culture and society. I think, you know, it's almost like terrorists. I think if there's going to be these individuals who think, oh, I can just buck the law and the requirements, create a separate prison for those transitioning prisoners. I think to put them on remand, the thing that frightens me is that you have these women, that you've got rapists, paedophiles and various others going into their prisons when they should be safe amongst
one particular case,
I think you're going to have some suspicious-looking women outside your door.
Who, me?
Yes.
Well, the story about Isla Bryson, right, is the one we're talking about. Isla Bryson is the woman who's been in the news.
Yeah.
That's the picture there. It's formerly a man known as Adam Graham who performed 2 criminal acts. He raped 2 different women.
Yeah.
The details are horrendous.
Right? He then decided that maybe he would transmit himself into a woman somehow after that. It now turns out that Nicola Sturgeon might have at least seen some common sense.
But there's now 6 more, Mike.
There are. No, I get
more.
that.
Yeah.
I get that. But this is the one that's in the news this week. But Nicola Sturgeon has said that he will not be put into a female prison.
Good.
After the sentencing, which at least is a step in the right direction. So I think if you're going to commit a criminal act as a man, you go to the prison as a man, don't you?
Yeah.
I don't even think it should be that far. You know, 42% of all trans-identifying prisoners are in prison for sexual offences. So it's not really... There is a correlation here. And the overwhelming majority, I think 99% of them are actually men because that's just how the statistics stack up. But you clearly see people are gaming the system. You can't really dispute that.
Well, this guy's been accused of gaming the system by his own wife. Who says that he's a scoundrel.
She burst out laughing when she saw him in the leggings.
There's one who's
The timing is very suspicious, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, she says that she first identified as trans at the age of 4, and yet it wasn't until being charged that the transition occurred.
Yes.
And now we've had the conviction.
It's amazing.
Yeah, after
and like
the
you
second
say,
rape.
it's all about potentially exploiting.
Exactly.
Exploiting.
But it's
those
amazing how many
loopholes.
people, and Russell-MOYLE will be one of them, who think that this is the right thing to do.
Oh, yeah, I mean,
Somehow,
I mean,
you know, if he says he's a woman, then we must accept and respect him for that.
But they can say that they're transitioning to become a woman. They could serve time in a woman's prison where they think it's a lot easier. And then they get released from prison and they could say, oh, to hell with that. I'm a man again.
Yeah.
And that's perfectly fine.
There have
People
been
like
enough
Lloyd
cases of that
Russell-MOYLE
happening.
would actually defend their right to do that.
I don't understand why we expect the state to even consider the gender identity of prisoners. I mean, that's completely outside of the state's remit.
You're a rapist. Doesn't matter what your
but the
gender
thing is,
is,
you're going
is
to
it?
prison for a crime. There are 2 options, male or female. You want to know which one you're going to? Check every cell in your body, and that's the prison you know you're going to. I don't care whether you dress in leggings, the cheap, tacky yellow wig, or whatever. Call yourself Isla or Michelle or Bruxella, whatever. just you know, go with the system. Why are we even discussing this? It's a waste of state resources.
Check your pants as well. You can see what's there, and then you can decide.
But there's also the question of them being vulnerable because they're going through the transition. Personally, I don't care. If you're that vulnerable, don't commit the crime in the first place.
Exactly.
All right. What about your victims?
That she wants to have the full range of NHS surgeries that
will
be required. So she may not be reversing her transition. But that begs the question: how much of a priority is this for our healthcare service, which has got 7 million people on the backlog?
I don't want to be paying my taxpayer money towards
No. I think if you really want to be vulnerable, you should try and self-identify as English. We live in Scotland. See how that goes. Anyway, Esther, you're up next with yet another pop star.
Sam Smith.
Yes.
Now, it is not because Sam Smith said there should be no gendered categories at the Brit Awards, and then when it was gender neutral, all the nominees happened to be men, and then Sam Smith had the audacity to say that it's not fair, for instance. And by the way, Sam Smith now goes as they.
He's they, isn't he?
Yeah,
so he's not a
because
man
he's confused. Anyway, I'm upset because he was on Jimmy Kimmel, and I had to see him in this awful black dress. He looked like Wednesday Addams going through really bad menopause. I was really upset and I was really distraught, and I just thought, if I had to see it, so do you, and therefore he is my plank. It was literally like a sausage wrapped up in black string. It was awful.
I've seen that. Why is
he doing that?
Can I throw on to that Channing Tatum's new campaign? I can't remember which designer it is, which has just come out, and he's in a dress.
Channing Tatum is
Channing Tatum, as in your favourite boy from Magic Mike or whatever.
Is it illegal to be straight in Hollywood? Is that the vibes I'm getting? What is going on?
The only fashion I can tell you about is I saw Victor and Rolf fashion show from Paris today. On front page of the Times, where everything, the upside-down dress was being worn.
As you do.
And this woman's wearing a dress sort of going like that, up there. And you're going to go, well, of course you're going to wear that on the tube, aren't you? You know, you can't even get down the escalator.
Well, it depends on whether Matt Hancock's on there or not.
Well, you can't talk about Matt Hancock, because that case is sub judice. Never mind. He's just upside down in general. But yeah, I mean, it seems remarkable that we have all of this stuff going on around us, distractions. I mean, does anybody care about Sam Smith?
I don't understand how and why people take the opinions of celebrities seriously. Most celebrities actually didn't finish secondary school because they went to Hollywood to pursue their dreams. Most of them are alcoholics. Most of them, you know, lead very degenerate lifestyles.
And also, you know what's going to happen. He'll get to a certain age and he'll go, God, I'm really sorry.
You know, I'm actually he again.
Jimmy
you know what
Kimmel.
I mean?
Yeah.
And so I don't understand why people take celebrities seriously. I don't understand why people take the voting or the political opinions of celebrities seriously. That I really just blows my mind. But I don't understand why anyone takes someone like Sam Smith and his opinions on male and female categories seriously. This is a confused individual.
Yeah. But he wants us very seriously.
Yeah, he wants us to call him they.
The Brit Awards.
Yeah.
And that meant that all of the nominees were male, and it pushed out female artists.
Yeah.
And no women were asked about this. No women's permission were asked about this. And also, he wants us to call him they as if he's a bunch of tapeworms. But like, we all speak English. We're not calling a single person they. That's grammatically incorrect.
It doesn't sound right.
Well, it's not good English.
No.
So I just, I find this whole thing very baffling. I'm so upset I saw them in that dress. Honestly, it's traumatizing.
You didn't see my
I haven't, so I'm rather
see my
pleased.
post on Instagram about how I identify then? No.
I haven't seen that.
How do you identify?
I identify as a threat. Try me.
That's a good one.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. The bottom line, I suppose, for people like Sam Smith, do you remember that video he made when it was lockdown and he was in his £8 million mansion? Weeping, crying, with a swimming pool. I know.
Hardships.
How awful it was to be locked in this £8 million mansion.
Well, that was like Madonna, wasn't it? She sent a message to the world from her bath with rose petals and saying, "Take care, everyone. Stay safe." You know.
I know.
Someone needs to tell Madonna to lay off the plastic surgery. She's looking like bread.
We'll be coming back with some more. Something from the Celestial Heights, I think, as well. You know who I'm talking about, don't you? The Bish. That's right. This is Plank of the Week. Welcome back to Plank of the Week. We're more than halfway through now. We've got some pretty good nominations, but we have not yet finished. And there's one big one coming at the end, which I think you'll all be rather pleased with. But let's know now to Annabel Denham, because she's got the next one. Who have you got for us?
I've chosen the Behavioural Insights team. Now, that name may ring a bell right in the backs of your minds. Yeah. This was the organisation, if you can recall, that told the government early on in the coronavirus pandemic that the British public wouldn't adhere to lockdown for more than a month or two. And therefore, the government should pursue
Is
a
this
herd
Neil
immunity
Ferguson's lot?
strategy.
Is this Neil Ferguson's
This
lot
is
at
separate to
Sage?
Neil Ferguson's lot.
Okay.
But that was then. They then went a little bit quiet, but they're now back, and this week have released research on pathways to net zero and how we build a net zero society. And it's hard to know what is more gloomy, what is more depressing.
Yeah.
The future that they paint in this document,
Yes.
where we can't drive as much as we might want to, where we can't take short-haul flights, where we need to reduce our meat consumption,
Can't eat steak.
or the way in which we get there, which is it essentially nudges, unless the nudges don't work, in which case we need mandates, bans, higher taxes, which is inevitably, I imagine, where we're going to end up. And what's also frustrating is that this is based on pretty flimsy data. So what they've done is they've surveyed people and they've asked very open-ended questions around, wouldn't you like to live a more sustainable lifestyle?
Yeah.
Wouldn't you like to be more environmentally friendly in your day-to-day activities? Well, very few people are going to say no in response to that. But what they don't do is present people with the trade-offs. And I think that's a fundamental issue with the whole net zero debate.
Yeah.
Few people would dispute that we need to address climate change, that it's a real challenge of our times, but people also need to be presented with the economics of climate
but they always
change
ask
and the
questions,
cost
don't they?
of adapting and mitigating. And I think that this, this feeds into that. And I would really urge viewers not to read this 146-page document.
The thing is, though,
as
we're
I have.
making
Because
our
you've
lives...
read it for everybody else, right?
I have, exactly.
But the point about the way they
commend
ask...
Annabel for actually reading it.
Yeah,
I know.
it's absolutely right. And I mean, I thank also lots of people for reading Harry's book, which I haven't done, so they can tell me what they think of it. Yeah, I don't have to. I'm not listening to the recording either. But, they always ask questions like, would you stop driving your car if it saved lives? And you go, oh, right then, I might do.
No, I don't care.
Well, no, I don't care either, but that's how they frame the question.
Yeah, which
So
makes me
biased.
question who are they interviewing? Because I'm like, do these people have a backbone?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
No, because a lot of people apparently, unlike you and I, Esther, they like to make out that they're nice people. And so when
Really?
people ask them a question, they kind of answer
What
with
a
the
waste of
nice
time.
answer.
Yeah,
On the other hand, I don't care, neither does she, by the way,
clearly.
what
Clearly
people
not.
think of me.
But it's
I've
stated
seen Esther
versus
drive.
it's stated versus revealed preferences. It's people may say something and respond to a survey, but their actual behaviour will be very different, especially if these things come with a cost. So the report is very big on electric vehicles, but we know at the moment they're simply not accessible to
Or
everyone.
environmentally
people.
friendly.
Not very
Well, there's that challenge
environmentally
too.
friendly at all.
And now with the biofuels.
And also, you can't charge them anywhere. We had a story today saying that the target figure of
infrastructure,
300,000 charge points is not going to be met, even by 2030.
I think the thing is, my frustration with the whole debate around net zero is this idea that us reaching net zero is going to have any impact on global warming or any of that.
Well, it won't.
Because the thing is, and I've said this many times, I always say this, every time I go home to Ghana, people are still burning the rubbish behind my house, right? The battle for saving the climate is not going to be fought in the West.
No.
I mean,
Well, I
with
keep
the exception
saying
of the
this,
US. It's going to be fought in
the
China.
emerging economies.
And
It's
Exactly.
China, it's India.
But the thing is, they're not.
South
People in that
America.
part of the world don't care, and you can understand why they don't care because they're trying to feed their families. They're trying to educate people. They're trying to get from point A to B. With all due respect, you telling them to use less plastic, so you feel like you're doing something for the environment. It's just not going to help. We don't have any sort of meaningful engagement with the major polluters of the world. And we're out here making people who live in the Western world's lives more difficult by deluding them and thinking that by driving your car less and by using less plastic, you're going to have any, make any considerable contributions to stopping climate change. And that's just not the case. And that's what I find really frustrating.
Well, Jacinda Ardern,
who's a
thankfully good. Yeah, but I mean, she's come up with a policy in New Zealand where she's going to charge farmers for the emissions of their animals.
For cows
farting. So the more, exactly, the more animals you have, the higher your emissions, the more she's going to charge them. And then she wondered why she was so popular.
She should have started charging emissions for her own animals or for her own speech. I mean, we've been famously doing an impression of her for a while. Don't talk to your animals. Which
I think there's more methane coming
out
out of Jacinda than there are farmer
There probably are, yeah,
But
absolutely
those sorts
right.
of measures are going to cost consumers more. If you place additional costs on
what
farmers,
is this idea
those
that
will be passed on
paying
to
more
their
taxes
customers.
that solves climate change? How do we jump from, if you want to tackle climate change, give the government more of your money? I mean, there's no one questioning the absurdity of that logic.
No, it doesn't work.
Well, one of the best reports I've read recently was in The Lancet, where you had 3 doctors who were basically saying the biggest health threat of the 21st century is climate change. And then they went through various things to do with medicine around the world that's apparently responsible for 4.4% of all global emissions. And they mentioned, what about all those machines that are using energy? Yeah, but these are machines that are actually keeping people alive.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Exactly.
I don't know what their plan is. Is it just to shut down healthcare?
to save the planet.
Save the planet.
And these are people that are not even having kids. This is the thing. They always talk about saving the planet and they don't have kids. I'm like, what exactly are you propagating? What species are you propagating?
I mean, my personal feeling on these guys who are behind many of these reports and initiatives literally just don't have enough hobbies in their life, you know, and they need to occupy themselves with something. And it's a bit like those people you see in the park who shout at pigeons. I kind of categorise them in the same ways. You're obviously not in the same park as me, Esther.
They come up with terms like creating the architecture, in which,
yes.
you know, it's really insidious stuff.
Very middle class as well. BS.
Privilege.
Complete and utter cobblers, you know, telling people that you must drink organic wine and you must eat organic food, even though most people can't afford to do so, you know. They buy cheap meat because they haven't got much money. That's the point. Anyway, you're up next, Andrew.
Yes, it's the Archbishop of Canterbury.
Of course.
Just in WELBY. Now, I could get him for many different things.
Yes.
But, I mean, most recently, he said we need to sort out social care in this country. And he's absolutely correct on that.
I think you can buy one, Mike.
Imagine looking like that and going,
need to get you one, Mike.
This is normal. Do you want to hear my opinion? Not really. No. Sorry, carry on.
So, yes, we need to sort out social care in this country.
Yes.
But his solution, despite inflation being really high, there's a cost of living crisis, taxes are at a 70-year high, his solution is to increase everyone's taxes.
Oh, great.
Because it is the moral thing to do. Now, he never thinks the moral thing to do is to cut your cloth to suit your means, and therefore we reduce government spending rather than increasing taxes. But he doesn't think like that.
Also, he doesn't want to increase taxes on the Church of England, which I believe.
Well, I think
from one of the wealthiest institutions there is.
It's funny you should say
rather
that,
good of them.
because the church commissioners a couple of weeks ago found £100 million down the back of what we can only assume is a very large sofa.
Yes.
So that the church can
pew,
navel gaze and hand wring about its links to slavery 250 years ago. So, for example, the Queen Anne's bounty. Queen Anne died 300 years ago. She left some money to the church. It was invested in the South Sea Company, which, of course, exports.
Oh, the South Sea Bubble Company, they've only just found it, have they?
Yeah, and therefore, because it's got connections with slavery, WELBY sort of apologising for all the links, and as if he was personally responsible for it. I mean, I'm the organist of one of the largest and one of the oldest parish churches in the country. And you walk around that church and you'll see graves there, and it'll say, "Here lieth the body of whoever it was who died in 1683 or 1734 or whatever." Now, I can guarantee that there will be some connection to the slave trade, either directly or through families. But so what? I mean, what is the point of trying to research all of this? Spending millions of pounds to say, here lieth the body of this bloke who died in 1734 who was connected to the slave trade.
It's not a secret, is it? I mean, one of my favourite stories of this week, and we didn't actually get them in to be a plank themselves, but The Guardian have been accused of racism, of all things.
Yes,
really?
Shocking.
Yeah, by three individuals who have been working on a podcast series about The Guardian's links to slavery, because the guy who started The Guardian had links to slavery, right?
I love the
apparently,
irony.
the people who were hired to do it, who were black sort of broadcasters, have basically said that the Guardian production was totally white. It was totally run by ridiculous people who had no understanding whatsoever of racism or the issues. So they've been hoisted with their own petard rather brilliantly, I'd have to say. But I mean, the hypocrisy of the Church of England, you know, which owns more land in this country, I think, than the King. Practically, it's got land everywhere, owns all sorts of estates up and down Great Britain, has loads of opportunities to house people who are sick and needy, to house the migrants who come here. You could build loads of houses on the land that they've got, but they don't do any of that. Instead, they tell us how we should be more moral and how should we behave better.
They started to group parishes together, so you'll get one vicar trying to look after 6 or 7 different churches. And the leadership of the Church of England, WELBY included, will turn around and say, it's because we can't afford it. I'm afraid money's really tight. I was at a meeting last year. Oh, money's really tight. But yet they can find £100 million to look at the historic links of the church to slavery.
God help us. I've got to stop because we're running out of time. I'm sorry. But we will be back. Coming up, we're going to be talking about very expensive cars. I'm not just talking about Will Geddes' one either. This is, of course, Plank of the Week.
Love it, you're traumatizing me.
Welcome back to Plank of the Week. We're in the final section, and this is where we decide who's actually going to win. But before we do that, we've got one more nominee, and I'm going to be making it. And it is a famous Italian motor car manufacturer by the name of Ferrari.
Okay.
Now, many people have not been in a Ferrari. I don't know if any of you have. It's probably Will Geddes has, I would imagine. But they make a great noise, and whenever you see them being driven, they're always being driven by somebody that doesn't look very nice. I mean, you know, but it is an extremely expensive car, 400,000 quid for the sort of average Ferrari. But they've made a massive error. They've decided to bring out an electric Ferrari. Yeah. All right? And this is all apropos of the net zero. They've applied for a patent to produce not only an electric Ferrari that will sell for £400,000, but they've also decided, in their wisdom, that it won't sound like a Ferrari if it's electric, so they're going to put a fake sound on the car. And
that's what everyone wants.
What on earth are you thinking? So there's going to be a speaker somehow on the outside of the car, so that when you're driving along, you can pretend that it sounds like a Ferrari. You can hear it there. I mean, how ridiculous is that?
That is
you know,
bad.
I mean, one thing if you're an enthusiast for an electric car and you like a Tesla because it doesn't make any noise, or you like a Prius or a Pius or whatever I used to call it,
Pius,
you know, fine. Have a car that doesn't make any noise and revel in the idea that you're, you know, saintly and virtuous and all of that. But don't have a fake Ferrari engine noise on the back of a car that costs that much money. Isn't that ridiculous?
I know this may come as a shock to you, Mike. I do not own a Ferrari.
Have you been in one?
I've never even been in one.
I'm amazed at that.
It's amazing. I haven't been on the right kind of dates. Obviously. Anyway, but I would imagine, not the right men, London is not full of my kind of men, but I would imagine that no one will spend the value of a house on a car and then expect it to make fake sounds. I mean, that's fake sounds. I'm just thinking no one wants to spend money on fake sounds.
Does it have surround sound?
So you start the evening out making fake sounds with your car. How's the evening going to end?
Especially if you're with a woman.
Fake sounds being made by all sorts of people.
I don't like where this is going.
Well, listen, I'm just saying.
Where this is going
I'm just saying it sets a very bad precedent.
Exactly.
You know, if your car's making a fake
fakery.
noise, the car's fake, you're fake, your
the woman
fake,
in the car is
the
fake.
sex is fake, everything's fake.
But I don't get it. I mean, I have to say the sound thing cheapens it. I've got a few mates who do drive Ferraris. I'm going to have to talk to them about it because it's the first I've heard, but I doubt any of them. I mean, half the fun of having a sports car, an Italian sports car, or a German sports car for that matter, is you get that throttly sound. I know it's childish to you women, you're probably very disappointed.
I'm happy with it, so far as I'm sat in it.
It's a compensation for something, but you love the throaty noise of the exhaust. You couldn't replicate
the what noise?
But what,
throaty.
what is to stop people from replicating the Ferrari sound in their little hatchbacks?
Well, exactly
right. You could end up in a scenario where you've got all sorts of noise pollution issues because everybody is
really
I'm sorry, I don't want to hear a Ferrari sound in a hatchback. That's fraud.
If you start making sounds of like a Ferrari coming out of a Volkswagen Golf, I think
that's
you've got
a catfish.
But listen, I've got to choose the winner, and that is going to be the Plank of the Week trophy. And I think there's been some great nominations, and you know, I'd like to think Lloyd Russell-MOYLE is up there somewhere. Sam Smith is up there as well. Beyonce is definitely up there. I mean, I wonder if even Justin Welby is up there. But I think the women in equality, they're all good, very good. I think there's only one name though that sticks out for me, and that is the name of Nadhim ZAHAWI, because in the end, he has dominated. I actually have some sympathy with him, but he has dominated the news this week. He's caused an awful lot of problems for poor old Rishi Sunak. So I'm afraid Nadhim ZAHAWI, chairman of the Tory party, you're also Plank of the Week. Well done. Thanks, Will. Thanks, Esther. Thank you, Andrew. And thank you, Annabel. We'll see you next week.